The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. As the title of this podcast suggests, I'm going to be talking about the current chlorine situation, the Tri-Chlor tablet shortage, and some alternates you can use. And the Chlorine Armageddon is definitely upon us. As of today, the price of a 50-pound bucket of 2-inch tablets in my area, if you look online, is $199. So the price has doubled from the wholesale price, and definitely things may get worse as the season progresses. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's Referral Program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Also receive priority service, enhanced rebate programs, a discount on your general liability insurance through SPA, a discount on your pool routing software through Skimmer, and an opportunity to co-brand with Leslie's on your social media, website, truck, and more. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. So not only are the Tri-Chlor tablets, $200 for the tablet, you also have a hard time finding them. And I think this was something that was predicted and really not anticipated, though. I think the price increase, of maybe $150 per bucket was what people were thinking was going to happen. But the fact that they're at $200 per bucket already for a 50-pound bucket of Tri-Chlor makes Tri-Chlor tablets kind of not the go-to sanitizer that it used to be. Wholesale, back last year, you can get a bucket for $78 here. And to pay $190 for a bucket wholesale, which is not unheard of, is definitely something that you can't really shake off or absorb as the pool service provider. Most pool service companies work off of two models. The first model is that all the chemicals are included except for certain things like salt, enzymes, and things of that nature, and so the tablets are part of the service rate. And then the other model is the one that I use, is where I sell the 50-pound bucket to the customer, leave it at their house, and then they absorb the cost of it. So it's not as bad of a problem in the second case. However, finding the Tri-Chlor tablets is the hurdle. And in the first case, you can't absorb a 100% price increase without passing that on to your customer. I know it's tough right now to do that, but you're going to have to pass the cost on to the customer. So how can you get through the situation, this Chlorine Armageddon that we're facing, as the media is calling it? And of course, once it's in the media, you know it's a problem. Just like, remember last year when you were online looking for toilet paper, when you've never purchased toilet paper online before. So I'm just saying that once the media gets a hold of something, they run with it, and then they cause, I don't know if they cause a panic, but they make everyone aware of the situation, which causes people to go out looking for the tablets and then buying up even more than they maybe need, or trying to get as much as they can for the season. Whatever the case is, if you can't find them, or if you can't, get through the price increase. But there are definitely alternatives to the Tri-Chlor tablets, and I'm going to go over those for you here. I'll start with the most expensive and probably not the most logical alternative, which is a saltwater generator. Now, if the customer is already moving towards a saltwater generator, now is the time for you to sell that to them. But I remember a local newscast I was watching on YouTube from Las Vegas. The reporter was, of course, holding up a Tri-Chlor tablet, calling them magic because of the way they slowly dissolve in the pool, adding chlorine to the pool, not even mentioning anything else about that. I'll cover some of the side effects of tablets in a little bit here. And then he said at the end of the broadcast that going to a saltwater system or saltwater generator was the best option. Now, he's comparing apples to oranges at that point, and he's kind of doing things that, he doesn't have any idea of the industry and of the price of things. And so I wouldn't say that he's misleading the viewers in any way. He just doesn't know the industry and the fact that a saltwater generator is about, 8 to 10 times the cost of the current bucket of tablets right now. So basically, if you wanted to get a saltwater generator installed, and let's say you have an average size pool, 15,000 gallons or so, you would cost you about $1,400 or $1,600 to have one installed from a reputable saltwater generator manufacturer and a reputable pool company. And if a bucket of tablets is $200 and the salt system is $1,600, that's eight seasons of tablets at $200 a pop. And then you have the built-in cost of the saltwater generator of the salt cell itself. They last about 5 years, and you have to buy a new cell after that point. So I would not say that a saltwater generator is a direct replacement for 3-inch Tri-Chlor tablets. Not in anyone who's economically sound would say that, but it is an alternative out there, so you can actually get a saltwater generator for your customer if they want to go that direction, or if they were thinking about it. Definitely now's the time to do it. But I would say you would be hard-pressed to tell the 80 customers on your route that you're going to go from tablets to a $1,500 saltwater generator. It's not going to work effectively. So there are some good alternatives, and I can give you the one that probably most people are going to do, and that is moving towards an enhancer of some type. And this could be either borates or Pool RX, or using enzyme and phosphate removers to make the chlorine more effective and last longer in the pool. Basically, the enhancer will enhance the effectiveness of the chlorine and make it last longer. I'll use Pool RX here at the beginning to give you the example. So you would get a Pool RX unit, charge the customer for that unit. You can charge them as a algicide or a seasonal algicide charge, however you want to put it in your billing. And then you would put the Pool RX in the pump basket, and that will basically prevent algae from growing in the pool. It's EPA registered, and since the microalgae is killed by the Pool RX before it's even forming, the chlorine will be much more effective. And so don't be surprised that if you have a pool that has a chlorine level of 3 parts per million, if you put a Pool RX in there, you go there the next week and maybe at 5 or 6 parts per million. It is that effective. So in most cases, you can probably use about half the chlorine you're using now. So if you're using 3 tablets in a pool, you can go down to 1 tablet or 1.5 tablets. And this is a way to stretch out the Tri-Chlor supply, using the Pool RX to kind of extend the effectiveness of the chlorine in the pool, thereby using less chlorine and thereby helping you in the situation. Now, I started with the Pool RX not because it's the best, but it's a pretty easy example to share with you. The other enhancer that I would recommend would be adding borates to the pool to bring it to 50 parts per million. And you can do this in 3 different ways. You can use boric acid powder, you can use 20-team mule borax, or you can use a pre-blended formula like the BioGuard Optimizer. Whichever way you want to go, there's all different pros and cons of each one. I think the boric acid powder is probably the one with the least problems, and I definitely would recommend going that direction. You can order your boric acid from your local supplier if they carry it, which they probably don't. You can order from a garden store, or you can get it online. The site that I use is called dudadiesel.com, and it sounds just like it's spelled D-U-D-A, diesel, like in a diesel truck.com. And definitely I would recommend going to their site, looking at the boric acid powder. They sell it in bags and buckets, and depending on the quantity that you order, depends on how much the price is, plus the shipping. And they ship FedEx to me in my area. I'm not sure if they're going to do freight if you order a lot of it. But basically, figure that you're going to add about 2.4 pounds of boric acid powder per 1,000 gallons of pool water. So if you have a 10,000 gallon pool on your route, you're going to add 24 pounds of boric acid to that pool to bring it to 50 parts per million. And so you're going to need a lot of boric acid powder if you have a large pool route. And so keep that in mind when you're ordering it, that you're going to need maybe a pallet of it. I'm not sure exactly how big your route is, but you're going to need a lot of boric acid powder to charge up a pool. And in some cases, it may be good to order like a BioGuard Optimizer product if the pool is smaller. I've done this before. Customers like to see the actual product you're putting in. And so I'll buy a small 20-pound pail or an 8-pound container of the BioGuard Optimizer, add the borates that way, and leave the bucket there. Charge the customer for the product. I don't charge them for the actual, putting the borate in the pool. And then they can see on their bill they're going to get charged for the BioGuard Optimizer, and they see the price of it. The problem with the Optimizer is you can't find a local dealer usually that carries it. So you have to order online, and sometimes the retail price of that is pretty high. So you don't make any money on it, but you do add the borates to the pool, and you can extend the chlorine in the pool by doing that. How borates work, basically, they keep the pH stable, and they're also what is known as an algistat, which means that they keep algae from forming. And this will definitely help the chlorine last longer in the pool. So here is the main problem you're going to run into when you're going from Tri-Chlor to, say, liquid chlorine or Cal Hypo or an enhancer. One of the things that you have to know is that the chlorine's effectiveness is based more on the cyanuric acid level in the pool versus the pH level in the pool. And this is kind of not new. Bob Lowry is a big proponent of this formula, and I think his formula is accurate in respects to the fact that in real life field testing, I think what he's saying is true. And so what he says is that the free chlorine level has to be 7.5% of your cyanuric acid level to be effective. And as a really easy example, let's say you have a pool on your route that has a cyanuric acid level of 100 parts per million. So at this point, it's pretty simple math. You just take the 100, times it by 7.5%, and that'll give you 7.5 parts per million of chlorine. And so in a pool with a cyanuric acid level of 100, you're going to need 7.5 parts per million of chlorine in there to prevent algae from growing in that pool. So here is the problem you're going to run into. So if you're cutting back on the Tri-Chlor tablets, and it's kind of like one of those built-in self-destruct things you see in movies, when you're cutting back on Tri-Chlor tablets, you're going to add less chlorine to the pool, of course, because you're not putting the same amount of Tri-Chlor in there. However, since the cyanuric acid level is high, you're going to need an elevated chlorine level to prevent algae from growing. So what's going to happen if you have a pool that you're putting 3 tablets in and you're going to put 1 tablet in, the free chlorine level is probably not going to be 7.5%. And this is off that pool with 100 parts per million of cyanuric acid to begin with. So you're going to be putting less tablets in, reducing the free chlorine to maybe 4 parts per million or 3 parts per million. And then algae is going to grow in the pool and bloom and spread, and you still have chlorine in the pool. However, it's not effective unless it's at the higher level based on the cyanuric acid level. And so basically, by cutting back on the tablets without adding liquid chlorine or cal hypo, you're really not going to be keeping that pool effectively or safe from algae and bacteria and viruses. So the problem is that the cyanuric acid level from the tablets, and I'll go back to the ingredients of the tablets real quick. The Tri-Chlor tablet, about half or more than half of that weight of that tablet, so one tablet is about 8 ounces, I would say. Half of that is cyanuric acid. So you're adding all of that to the water when you put a tablet in there, a Tri-Chlor tablet, and it's dissolving in the pool. And so one alternative, if you're using Tri-Chlor tablets in the pool, is to partially drain or completely drain the pool and start over with a different sanitizer. This may not go over well, especially in Southern California when we are entering a drought, or in a drought, officially not yet here, but in Northern California I think they are, and you can't really drain the pool. And so what you're going to have to do is use less tablets and then use an enhancer. For example, if you have the borates at 50 parts per million, according to Bob Lowry, all you're going to need is 5 parts per million of chlorine with the borate in the pool versus 7.5. So that helps you already right there. But I think one of the best solutions for this crisis is to, if you have tablets and you're still using them and you have to use less tablets, use an enhancer. And one enhancer that I left off here, which is highly effective also, and I used it all last season in some of the pools, is using a phosphate remover and enzyme. Now this one takes a little bit more effort because you have to add it to the pool while you're there. But however, using a phosphate remover and enzyme definitely enhances the chlorine because the phosphate remover is removing the food source for the algae, and the enzyme is breaking down inorganics in the pool, allowing the chlorine to be more effective. And so if you're using an enzyme phosphate blend, definitely it's going to help make the chlorine last longer in the pool. And what I like to do is buy the bottle, leave it at the customer's house, charge them for it so they can see that they have the product there, and then add it every week. And so that's a really good enhancer that will help during this crisis. I think bottom line, if you're not using an enhancer on your pool route, now is the time to start using one of the ones I mentioned, PolarX, or a Frog system, mineral system, or a Nature 2 inline system. And if a customer has a Nature 2 already on their plumbing, you can unscrew the top and just put a new cartridge in there. A lot of pools here have the Nature 2 that no one's used in years, and so you can actually utilize the existing Nature 2 component that's on the plumbing itself. They're really easy to install. It comes with a drill bit, you drill it in there, and it does pretty much what the PolarX does on a little different level. And then the Frog mineral system's been around for a long time also. Those are great. And then of course you have the borates, which I recommend as the primary enhancer. And then you have the phosphate and enzyme treatment. I wouldn't recommend selling the customer a UV or ozone system unless they're already in the market for one. These are kind of secondary sanitizers, not primary, and so they won't sanitize the water without chlorine anyway. But definitely they're an option if you want to sell those to your customer. And then switching to liquid chlorine would be probably the best sanitizer you can go with the Tri-Chlor tablets. If you're using Tri-Chlor still on a lesser basis, using liquid chlorine as your primary sanitizer would be the way to go. So kind of the scenario would look like this. If you have a pool route with 70 pools or 80 pools, you would either sell the customer a Pool RX at the beginning of the season, which is already into it, or you would add borates to the pool and charge them for the product. And again, you're charging for all of these enhancers for sure, but you're definitely going to have to use one of these. And so it would look something like this. A pool that's using 3 tablets, you're going to use 1 tablet, or you're going to switch over to a whole different sanitizer. And of course, I can cover Hypo Tablets briefly here for you. And then you're going to use liquid chlorine to supplement the chlorine level. And you're going to use, probably more liquid chlorine or Hypo shock to substitute the chlorine level that was being put in there by the Tri-Chlor tablets. And this will help mitigate any algae problems, because I mentioned that the borate, the phosphate remover, and the Pool RX all keep the algae pretty much out of the pool. So you're not going to have major algae blooms doing this kind of method, because I think the number one issue you're going to have by trying to cut back on the Tri-Chlor tablets is, as I mentioned earlier, how the free chlorine level and cyanuric acid are tied together. So if you just cut back on the tablet use and drop it to 4 parts per million every week, you definitely could have an algae bloom, which means you're going to be spending money on algicides and brushing the pool and spending time there, and the pool's not going to look good. So definitely the enhancers will help you get through this period. And then let me briefly touch on the Hypo tablets. Pool Life and CCH are the same parent company, Segura, so they make these Hypo tablets that are slow dissolving. Now, these were not in anyone's radar because the price point of these tablets are just about what it costs now for Tri-Chlor tablets. So since it's an equal or level playing field now, you may want to consider the slow dissolving Hypo tablets. You can either get the feeder that they manufacture, or you can introduce them into the skimmer. For commercial pools, you can't do that with the tablets. But since the Hypo tablets have a high pH, putting them in the skimmer is not a problem for residential pool use. And they dissolve just like a tablet would dissolve, or a Tri-Chlor tablet, would dissolve in the pool. Now, cautions here, you can't use the Hypo tablet in a Tri-Chlor feeder or in a floater, because you could cause an explosion. And besides that, they need a lot of water flow over them. And so you could put it in the skimmer or their manufacturer's feeder. And then you would use about 2 of these Hypo tablets per 10,000 gallons. And so the price point now is pretty close to Tri-Chlor, and they're readily available. And so you can actually switch your customers over to these Hypo slow dissolving tablets. Now, Segura is the only company that I know of that makes the slow dissolving tablet. So you can't go out there and just buy any bucket of Hypo tablet. They may not dissolve the same way. So if you are going to buy the Hypo tablets, I would suggest the Pool Life or the CCH tablets, because these are the ones that have the proprietary slow dissolving formula. And I definitely would recommend using those over the Tri-Chlor because they're available and they don't add cyanuric acid to the water. So that's the advantage of the Hypo tablets. They don't introduce more cyanuric acid to the water. They will add calcium to the water, so be aware of that. If you're in an area like my area here where the calcium levels are high, you may have to mitigate that by partially draining the pool and adding fresh water. But besides that, they are a good alternative now that the Tri-Chlor prices are about equal to that. And last, I think if you're going to go with liquid chlorine on your pool route, Hasa has a liquidator, which I think they're out of stock. Just about everywhere I looked last week, they didn't have any. They have a new liquidator coming out onto the market. It's supposed to launch sometime in June. And I think, like everyone else, they're having a supply and demand problem. Since the Tri-Chlor tablets are so expensive, people are looking for alternatives. And so they bought up all the liquidators that were in stock. And then the new ones are coming out. And I'm not sure how many of them they have, but they're going to need tons of them for that to be effective. I don't think you want to sell your customer on a roller can because those are pretty expensive. But the liquid feeders from Hasa require no electronics and they plumb right in. Basically, it's a bucket you fill up with liquid chlorine. You attach the inline connectors and it pumps the chlorine into the pool during the week. And you can maintain a chlorine level this way. Again, you may have trouble finding it this season, but I think going forward, adding a liquid feeder to the equipment area of your customers is a great way to mitigate the high cost of the Tri-Chlor tablets. It's anyone's guess when they get the BioLab factory back up and running what the price point of these tablets are going to be next season, but I would gather that the price is going to be still high because once the price goes up, like anything else, it hardly comes down. So I don't think we're going to go back to $78 a bucket. I could be wrong, but in any case, there are alternatives. There are things you need to do for this season and to prepare for next season. So I mentioned the enhancers, I mentioned the Hypo Tablets, and also liquid chlorine feeders. These are all ways to kind of get you through that situation. And I think it's going to be a tough year for a lot of people. One thing I think that you should note in your business is that you can't absorb the cost of the increase in the chemicals, the Tri-Chlor tablets, the price of the shock, or the increased price because you're adding more liquid chlorine or the shock to the pool. And of course, muriatic acid prices are going up. So everything seems to be going up, probably at the wrong time for the Pool Service Pro. Normally it's just one chemical or one product going up. Now everything's going up. And so you have to find some way to pass this on to your customer. It may be pretty easy because the media is out there helping you. Just send them a YouTube video of one of the articles on, CNBC or CNN or your local newscast and tell them, look, the price of the chemicals have gone up because of COVID, because of the fire with BioLab, however you want to say it, and tell them that you can't absorb it and pass the cost on to them. And you kind of have the media on your side. So it's kind of a good thing that they're out there saying this because now you have some clout when you raise your prices. But the bad thing is the situation is real. The price increase is affecting you, and there are alternatives out there. I definitely think that the enhancer is necessary to get you through this period, and it also mitigates some of the cost because you can pass on the cost of the enhancer directly to your customer. If you're looking for the other podcasts that I've recorded with Bob Lowry, Harold Evans, and also Rudy Stankiewicz on his algae book or on the Tri-Chlor problem, you can find them at my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, there's a podcast icon. Click on that. That'll take you to the previous podcast I recorded. And definitely I would refer to those podcasts to get some more knowledge on how to use these enhancers and ways to kind of get through this Chlorine Armageddon, as the media is calling it. And the resources are definitely there on my prior podcast recordings. And if you're in the industry and want to enhance your business, definitely check out my coaching program at poolguycoaching.com. A lot of great resources there, and you can also get a discount on your general liability insurance by being a member of the group. Again, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's Referral Program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.